The H1B guy here, and tonight the H1B guy live Stamp It Out Q&A 8. We're going to cover immigration journey, being recruited here in the US, immigration advocacy, and a whole lot more. But before we get started, I'd like to ask you, if you haven't already, to please subscribe to the H1B Guy channel here on YouTube and like this video so that it helps promote the live stream and the YouTube algorithm, not only now, but for future. I also wanted to mention that the H1B Guy offers a variety of consulting services. I help businesses and individuals solve complex work authorization issues and the recruitment process while bringing awareness to employment-based immigration benefits. If I can help you, please reach out. I'd love to hear how. Tonight's live stream is brought to you by RecruiterNetworks.com, the smart solution for digital perm ads since 2001. Well, it is hard to believe that this is the first Stamp It Out Q&A for 2021, and also the first one since I had my good friend Dr. Raj Karnatak on right before Christmas. I really wanted to focus at the beginning of 2021 on spreading, my advocacy awareness. And so that's why you saw the Documented Dreamer series, which we've now done 3 episodes of, plus an introduction video, as well as the H1B Guy and Friends Live, and the EAD Awareness live series that I did last week that has, I think, over 2,500 views. But I wanted to get back to the Stamp It Out Q&A because this is one of the original ideas I had when I was coming up with the concept behind the H1B Guy platform. So tonight I have the pleasure to introduce to you my good friend, Samir Kulkarni. I've long referred to Samir as my good luck charm on a lot of the live streams when he started showing up in the live stream chats. And honestly, that was around the same time that my subscriber count here on this channel really started to grow. So Samir's kind of my lucky rabbit's foot, if you will. He and I have been communicating ever since, and I'm so excited for all of you to hear his story. Samir, how you doing?
Hey, Robert. Hi, doing good. Thanks for having me.
I'm so glad to have you on tonight. Thank you for joining in here. I just wanted to say one more time, go ahead and like this video. And if you're not already, subscribe to the H1B Guy channel here on YouTube. At the end of the Q&A, we will try to get to some questions and comments. If you have any questions or comments for myself or Samir, we can get to those. If you don't, if you just want to leave us a line and drop us some encouragement, we'd love to hear from you. So please take the time to do that. But Samir, I just want to jump right in. This is the first question that we start every Stamp It Out Q&A with, and that's this. Tell me your story. Where are you originally from, and why did you come to the U.S.?
Okay, so I'm originally from western part of India. You might be aware of Mumbai. I stay close by in a city called Pune. It's a IT hub. I grew up in western part. In Maharashtra, the state. And while pursuing my master's in MCA, I got recruited by IBM as a campus recruit. Both me and my wife, we were lucky to get recruited in IBM, and we started our journey there. And coming to US was more of a career choice in terms of like when I started switching jobs back in India. It came to a point where I don't know how many people work in SAP as in our audience, but in that technologies domain, it's more important to have an on-site or a customer-facing experience in your resume, and that's the thing. I was every time I was posed a question, I didn't have an answer for that. I worked with a couple of domestic clients per se, but not like for the international one. Although my H1 was done by my previous employer KPIT. It was like it came by the time the project was over. The typical H1 process, right? It starts in April, it goes long till October, and by the time it gets to the approval and stamping and stuff, the project almost was like it was over. So I moved to IBM, and there I had H1, and when I came back to IBM, this was my second tenure in IBM. They needed somebody to represent as like lead for an year long duration, and that was the aim, because my wife was working back in India. So although I was a bit hesitant to leave my 1.5-year-old daughter and all the setup back in India and come here. So it was like but back then I only knew that it is just a year long affair. So I just came down to start on that project, and then eventually my wife, she joined me here for on she took a sabbatical from her employer, and she joined me for a brief period of time. But eventually, in that time period, I got a call from my current employer, VSP, and they offer like pretty good position and job prospects. And it happened like it was totally unplanned, and then there was an opportunity to settle here. So yeah, that's been the journey so far.
So from Pune to the US, really kind of a couple of different rounds of consulting firms to get you here, right? Very high skilled, niche role. And I want to talk about that a little bit in a few minutes. But, the next question, which is one that we always ask here too, as part of the Stamp It Out, is, if you could go back in time and tell yourself some advice before you were to get on that plane and come to the US for the first time, what would that be?
Uh, to be yeah, because back then, today the perspective might be different, because the problem is like back then, I did not know that it's gonna be more than 1 year. That was like specific time period. I have a house in India. I have I had my family back there, so it was obvious that I wanted to go back, and just it's gonna be a 1 year affair. But when I signed up for an opportunity out here, it was all good. Only thing that I was not aware of, this whole green card backlog, which spans more than 150 years and stuff like that. So yeah, in the retrospect, if I was that Samir from that particular time, it would be a little difficult to make this choice, knowing that it's gonna take forever to settle as a citizen out there. And to me, from job perspective, it's really not an issue. I love the work environment and the company that I'm working for, and the work as well. Only challenges it poses for me is each time I have to visit my family or friends back in India. It's a challenge. Every time I have to ensure that I have to account and stability timeline for stamping, and plan my travel around my stamping. Every 3 years I have to worry about extensions and stuff. Yeah, so those things considered, yeah, definitely it would have been a different decision. But
Go back
yeah,
and tell yourself that, listen, the job that you're going to do and the role that you're going to perform is ideal, but you're going to live with this uncertainty and this lack of sort of freedom, right? I mean, I think
yeah,
that's what it comes down to. And I think you said it best, that a lot of individuals, that it's all about, I got to get an H1, I got to get in the US. But what you don't think about is what happens past that, right? And
hmm,
the backlog as it relates to EB2 and EB3 individuals from India, which leads me into a lot of what I talk about here on this channel, and a lot of my content is focused around employment-based preferences, specifically in STEM. And you alluded to SAP-based technologies earlier, and I can tell you that I go back to 2006, 2007, recruiting SAP basis. I know that's more admin types, right? But I know you perform what I'd call a very high skill niche role, which is an SAP ABAP developer, right? And some systems components to that. And I think, to me, when I look at what that means, uh, you know a lot of the H1B visas are intended to do, or these high skilled niche roles that you've received a lot of training kind of coming up through your education and early experience. So how did you get into SAP ABAP? What led you to that path?
So yeah, small correction. Like I started my career with SAP ABAP, but no,
Mm,
I do. Uh, I started I did my master's back in 2008. I finished my master's, and when I joined IBM, before joining IBM or before doing masters, so I worked with my brother on a couple of .NET projects,
mhm,
and then I did my master's and I joined IBM. So in IBM, it's a huge organization. So what happens is when you're a campus recruit, you're not a lateral hire, at least in India. So you are assigned a technology unit, and
mhm.
I happened to I was happened to be placed into SAP technology per
So
se.
you were a college recruit, freshly out of college, placed
Yes,
into a technology vertical. At that time, it was SAP for you.
yeah,
And
that
so
was
really what that does, then, placed in sort of that technology vertical for IBM, is gives you a lot of early hands-on technical training, right?
Yes. So they train rigorously for around 3 months, 3 to 4 months on SAP. We have to go through an exam. If you don't it was 2008. We were talking about, like, that was the worst time to get placed, and that was the
Right.
worst time to.
The financial crisis going
Yes,
on at that
yes.
point, right?
And that's where, even though I was not like sure whether I want to do SAP for long, I had to choose that because there was there was a crisis going on, and the training went well. After the training, it's typically an examination where you can be fired after if you don't clear that. So fortunately, all my batch made it.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, what happened is I worked on SAP ABAP for quite a good amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
But somehow, having worked on object-oriented technologies prior to that, like .NET, my inclination was more towards object-oriented languages, and I
Yeah,
did
the
not like. Yeah,
OOP, right?
yes,
And then.
and I did not like the whole paradigm shift of working on procedure. Oh, sorry, the fourth generation language that ABAP is.
Mm-hmm.
So I started exploring multiple opportunities where I'll get to do something else than what I'm doing
Mm-hmm.
currently.
Mm-hmm.
But being an IBM, it's a such big organization. You cannot, you cannot go out of that vertical. So I had to look for opportunities within the vertical. So fortunately, there was a project with Caterpillar.
Mm-hmm.
They needed somebody who knows SAP ABAP
Mm-hmm.
and who can do Java or J2EE applications on
Mm-hmm.
their own. They won't be training you.
So
So that's what I
connecting their
yeah
SAP system
to
to other
J2EE
applications
yes
using J2E, Java Enterprise, Java 2
yes.
Enterprise. Okay.
And that's where I jumped on that opportunity. I trained myself into J2EE because it was not hard, because I had Java as my major subject in my masters, so it was not too difficult to catch up. And then I trained myself into J2EE, and then I got into this whole. It's not really so. My piece of advice is not really uh, a very difficult role to get into. It's just that nobody wants to do two technologies stacks at the same time, and that's where my advantage was.
Mm-hmm.
So each time I applied for different jobs, the main benefit was a person who works on two technologies, bridging the gap. That's it. I mean, I'm not special. I'm not like a geek or something like that. But
Yeah.
yes, so my edge was that I could work at the same time on two different technologies, and nobody wanted to. So Java people didn't want to get into SAP. SAP folks
Mm-hmm.
didn't want to go on the Java spectrum,
Right.
and I could do that. So it
So
worked out well for me.
multilingual in your coding languages,
Yes.
right? And I think that that makes you a unique niche, right? And you say a lot of people don't want to do that because what it does is it can narrow you in a sense, right? In terms of I do a little bit of this, I do a little bit of that, meaning a little bit of VABOP, a little bit of J2EE or Java 8 or whatever you're using now. And I think that a lot of developers just only want to do one or the other, or .NET MVC, right? And so but that's really interesting to me because if you think about what you're doing, which is probably connecting a lot of internal applications into the SAP system as a whole in a very large enterprise environment, right? And internal applications now have become so advanced in what they do and so robust that there's a lot of intricacy into that and into the production that goes into that. And so that leads me kind of into my next question, which is, you told me a really interesting story, and it really resonates with me as a recruiter, right? And that's, I think you were having lunch or speaking with one of your peers in your current employer with your current employer, and they didn't realize that you were a perm employee of the organization in that you actually had worked for a different employer here in the US and were recruited for this specific role. I could tell you as a recruiter firsthand, that happens a lot where we would use LinkedIn and identify 15 profiles like yours, right? ABAP, J2EE sort of programmer, and send messages that, hey, I've got a full-time perm opportunity. Is that something you'd be interested in? And the common response back is, I'm on H1. Do they sponsor? Right. And can you tell me a little bit about how you were recruited and the process around that?
Yeah, so it's a funny story. I mean, that was one of my peer. Typically what happens in the setup that I worked in, there are a lot of times people working on contract. They have a stipulated contract limit out here, and that's a good practice to promote employees more. So they have limited term contracts, and after
So
that, the
do they
contractor has
cap it
to.
at like 18 or 12 months or
Yes,
24?
yes.
What's the contract cap?
It's typically 18 months, I suppose, and they
Yeah.
have to be away for like about 3 months, and then they
There's a
can.
separation, a 90-day separation, a sit out, which
Yes,
is very common in a lot of these enterprise
yeah. I
accounts. And
believe I believe Microsoft started that, and
yeah,
people, yeah,
the
started
the
following.
financial institutions do it a lot too. And it what it does is it creates freshness in the consultant
Yes, not only that, and
case,
then it
right?
puts more focus on the employees, so
Yeah.
that yeah, they are kind of more they can kind of take ownership of the things, and they know that the consultant is not going to be there for a long time, so they have to
Yeah.
own the things.
So your
So
peer goes, man, you've been here more than 18 months. What's going on,
No,
right?
no. I mean, he kind of knew that I'm an employee. It's just that he didn't know that I ever worked. I mean, I never worked with my current employer ever as a contractor or in any capacity for that matter. So his question was like, do we do that? Like, do we hire people who never worked as contractors for us? And I was like, yes, I didn't know about my current employer at all because VSP doesn't have a presence in India as an insurance company. So I mean, and I did not work on any of their projects while I was working for IBM. I was working in a completely different sector, automotive, which was Caterpillar. For the same, I came on site in Peoria, Illinois. So and at that time I got a call from like from VSP, and I didn't know what the company does. So I like, and my plan was not to stay more than 1 year. So first thing was to do is like I said, first time I said no, because it's something I haven't given a thought about. And I got another call after a couple of days, and then I explained them the situation, that I don't know about the company, and Then the HR was like, she took me through the process and she explained me how I have a VSP insurance, and then I came to know, because so being from India, you typically don't care about your vision insurance. Back there, we don't need it. It's not as costly out here. So that's when I came to know that yes, that's the company, and and then I went through the interview process. I loved the interview process because the questions were relevant, and um, I liked the way they interviewed me, and the setup they introduced me, whatever they're working on. And it was time when I switched back to SAP ABAP for my for IBM, and it's been some time I did not do my the work that I love the most, like working on Java and ABAP. And they pitched me the same, because while my second tenure started with IBM, it was more of my role was more of an ABAP lead out there.
Right.
So, and it was like it was restricting me from more coding to more leading. And then this opportunity presents itself, like you want to do this, like want to do Java applications along with SAP. That's what I love the most, and it all fell in place. So I said yes to that. That's how I ended up in VSP.
So recruited, thought that the current employer who was then at the time recruiting you was some sort of third party boutique,
Yes.
nobody, and you're like, you hear three initials and you're like, run, right? I want
Yeah.
nothing to do with
So I
you,
was, yeah, because before that I got a couple of opportunities, like calls, and they were like consulting firms, and I was not at all interested in,
Yeah, you're not looking for
because
that. You're already working for, multi-billion-dollar global
yeah, and
conglomerate,
and that's
right?
what that's
Pretty
what I love, because that was my second tenure in IBM. So it tells a lot
stability.
about, tells a lot
Yeah.
about like reputation of IBM back in India. I love the
Mm-hmm.
company.
Mm-hmm.
So it was all based on opportunity that that
Yeah,
just
and I've talked about this a lot, and I did a presentation last week, talking about the value of the H1B for the COO Forum of Atlanta, and one of the things I talked about is recruitment and retention strategy for recruiting H1B employees, and my four pillars are it's money, green card, the job, the role, and then the company, right? I think that a lot of times those are the four things that motivate someone like you to make a move. And when you and I talked, I mean, it was a great opportunity, meaning good compensation. There was some discussions around kind of future for you with the company. The role was ideal for you, and then the company, when you realized, oh, this is a global, insurance-based organization that's extremely reputable. This makes a lot more sense than going to work as some consultant for
yeah.
some middleman third party, right?
Plus, you know what? Like the most attractive part of the whole job description was like, until then, I've been working for like big clients like Ericsson, or Caterpillar, or other companies like that. So
Yep.
what happens is you get to develop things, and you get to do a lot of things. It's just that you don't get the ownership of the things.
Right.
So, and here, that part that you'll be owning the application, entirely, and you get to decide a lot of things, and you get to make a lot of decisions.
The
That
difference in
that
being a,
Yes,
a perm employee versus a hired consultant that's building
yes,
something that's going into production that then the internal employees will own, right?
yeah.
To a totally different flow down.
And that's
Man,
it. That's the challenge I love. So
yeah, very cool. Well, I wanted to just ask those of you out there watching, if you haven't already, like this video, make sure you're subscribed to the H1B Guy channel here on YouTube. We have one question in the comments, but we'd like to take some more. So if you've got any questions or comments for Samir and I, we've got a few more. I've got several more questions for him, but we'd like to get to those at the end of the chat here today. But I wanted to talk a little bit more about your personal situation, and it's something that it's come up a few times in the live stream. about your spouse and her H4 extension and what's the best approach. And I know that kind of through me, we got you connected with the Documented Dreamers Advocacy group because, as you mentioned, your daughter is a documented dreamer, and he was born outside of the U.S. And so I think that the thing that always intrigues me about individuals like yourself is that um, there's so many of you out there, and by you I mean high skilled immigrants with very niche skill sets like yourself. There's so many of you out there that just kind of sit back and aren't willing to speak out. And so I wanted to ask you, what's been leading you to talk openly, about your present situation, and as well as your future here in the US, not only for you, but for your H4 dependent spouse, your documented dreamer daughter. What is it that's motivating you to speak up?
Yeah, so in my opinion, there is a lot of misinformation around this whole H4 and then documented dreamers, and that's why I wanted to speak out. Like, it's not just the high-skilled immigrant that gets impacted due to the whole long wait times, but its major impact is on their family. Like for me, it's okay because it's gonna be like H3 year. My employer is they're really supportive and they keep extending it on time, and that extension goes through, and then I just keep working. But on the other spectrum of the things, like for my wife, who's super smarter than me, so we started a career together, and she has been progressing in her career way better than me in back in India, and she decides to join me, uh, because we chose our family over everything. She comes down, joins me, and that back then we did not have this idea that there is going to be this whole long duration. And then when we knew that H4 EAD is allowed to work, so that's when we make a decision, because ultimately my current employer did my perm and stuff. So and that went through. She gets her EAD. She gets quickly a job, very good job with state of California. She's working for, and only thing that that drives, like that period that we spent between switching job from IBM to out here in Sacramento. So it was a tough situation for her to spend that year and a half without a job when you worked for so many years prior to that. So, and now that we are in the situation of, like, these things happening with H4 EAD, that, the H4 delays, the biometric, and then obviously the getting the H4 EAD print, like the EAD card printed, and losing the job because of those delays. So that looms around, and I can clearly see the tension that's mounting on her, and I don't want that, because it's like, it's although it's not about money, but it's about her financial independence. Like, she loves to go there and work, like, as she owns something of her own. That's her
Yeah,
space.
it's freedom, right?
Yes.
And I talked about this last week. It's a human rights crisis for these women like your wife, the ones who have already aged out and experienced job loss. I mean,
Yeah.
it's pretty incredible, you know?
And then it comes to daughter, like, when we plan for our kids, like, their future, from their education standpoint, from their entire life. And when I hear the stories that people go to the same institutions and they are treated differently based on where they're born, and that
Hmm.
kind of sets my heart low, because it's like my daughter going to the same institution, competing with the same people, but when it comes to the country of birth, as she is not born here, she'll be disadvantaged. She'll be at a disadvantage, and that's what bothers me a lot. Why,
Hmm.
why she should suffer out of that? And what made me talk openly about this situation is, unless we tell these stories, because typically I know for sure, like, when I talk about DACA, or I talk about, like, any other immigrants issue, and I respect those too. It's just that when we talk about those, there is fair bit of awareness about those, because they are talked into the political spectrum, they are into other social groups, they are talked about, and they are people are well aware of what goes in there.
Yeah.
And unless we come out with our stories, nobody will know. And if nobody
Right.
knows, nobody will care to pass a legislation or go ahead and change these rules which are affecting. So
Hmm.
that's the basic reason.
Well, I think when you look at some of the DACA advocacy, it's just been organized for a lot longer than the
Yes.
documented dreamers or even high skilled immigrants or the green card backlog groups that have formed. So these things take time, and I think that you said it best. It's like if I sit back and not speak out, then what I'm not going to expect a different result, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, you know that okay, hey, I've done my part. I've said my piece. I've helped educate and bring awareness to a broader spectrum of people, which kind of moves into the next question, which is last year, we dealt with the roller coaster of Senate Bill S-386
Yeah.
and HR 1044 at the end of the year, and kind of everything that happened around the Fairness for High Skilled Immigrants Act. You're seeing a big push on Twitter right now of getting that bill reintroduced, that text and that language. I know you keep up with a lot of the latest and greatest news that's out there. What are your thoughts on immigration reform? And I want you to cover both. Like, do you think this comprehensive immigration reform bill has any chance? Do you think we'll see something happen in Congress before the end of the year? Or do you think it's going to be a smaller bill approach, and that's how they're gonna have some of this reform, by the end of the year? What are your thoughts on where we are right now?
So if we talk about the current situation, we are in limbo, to be very frank. And the problem with reforms is like there are too many variables to it. And the comprehensive bill that was promised by the Biden administration the moment they came in, that seems like too good to be too good to go through at
Hmm.
this point. Uh, and certainly, when I would have like definitely believed that it would make it through the as it is. But since we had a lot of issues around, like even including documented dreamers into the Dreamers Act. I mean, it was a basic thing, and it still faced challenges. So something tells me, like it will be a bit of challenge to introduce and get through all of those bills. So it will be piecemeal, I suppose, if at all that has to happen this year. I'm not really very positive, but if that's something to happen, it will be piecemeal, most likely. And I was following another, an immigration attorney, Greg Siskin, and in his opinion,
Hmm.
I believe it's going to happen. It's just that they are not introducing it at this point because the deadline for Dreamers Act and the Farm Bill was ahead, I suppose, and that's
Hmm.
why it took a backseat. But if it happens, it's good, but not sure at this point if it will happen in the whole, or most likely it is piecemeal, and there will be a lot of amendments. I'm not sure, like if this is the year.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think you're going into an election year, right? And so
Yeah,
it really starts to become a question of, is it going to happen this year? If it doesn't, when will it happen? And
and then the willingness, because a couple of policies which are impacting are in place, and they were put in place by previous administration. They are not taken out yet,
right.
so that
Yeah,
puts
the wage level,
yeah,
the
yeah,
LCA, the staggered, the 4 year plan on the wage level hasn't been rescinded yet.
yeah, and then
Um,
biometric.
the biometrics issue still not rescinded, the lottery, the wage-based selection, that's still in the same place. And so I think, what you've seen is that you saw a lot of talk early on, and we're in what, the mid 60s now, and in terms of how long the 46th president's been in office.
Yeah.
You've seen a lot of immigration discussion. I mean, with the U.S. Citizenship Act of 2021, the Dream and Promise Act. So you've had your fair share of legislation that's come up. I've gone on record. I think that the CRI, the Comprehensive Immigration Reform, it has, I said a 50-50 shot. The odds are probably a lot lower. I mean, you look at 2005 was the last time we had a significant comprehension reform. But the good news is I think what's happened. This is just me reading the tea leaves, right? And love for you to comment on this. But I think with social media and with what really transpired with the theatrics of Senate Bill 386, honestly, all of last year, the holds on that, the blocks, if you will, the Senator Durbin theatrics that happened in July, August, leading into the Senator Scott sort of
Changing
Rosetta
the language.
Stone.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about what all of that did, is it really kind of stirred up a little bit of a hornet's nest, right? It infuriated the backlog community because they saw how American politics is played, and that American politics is driven by dollar bills, quite honestly. And you see that continuing with Senator Durbin and what he's doing now, even this year. And that is, it goes back to a lot of people talk about term limits being important. This is another case for it. When you
Yeah.
look at some of these dinosaurs that are senators in the U.S. Senate right now, that literally they make their decisions based on their donors.
Yeah.
And that's a problem for democracy. It just is. And so, I think for me, it goes back to, that's one of the things that I want to make sure that we are bringing awareness to. And so I wanted to share something, and I wanted to move into another question. And so I've been reading this book, this Tony Dungy book. You can see it's called Uncommon Life, Daily Challenge by Tony Dungy. I got it at Goodwill too back in the summer, but I started it this year, and it's a daily devotional. For those of you who aren't familiar with Tony Dungy, Super Bowl winning coach. And now is a media sports personality on NBC. He's written a couple of books, but this one was a New York Times bestseller. It's a couple of New York Times bestsellers. But the devotional today talked about influence. And it really struck a really big chord for me, just the fact that I was going to have you on today, Samir. And I think about, again, as I've alluded to, you being my good luck charm. And so the uncommon key, which is kind of the takeaway for the day through this, says everyone has a platform in different settings with small groups or large. What is yours? Use it to make a difference in the world around you. Don't wait for God to send someone else. And I think about, we just talked about your reform and why you're speaking out, and I think about what I've been doing here on the H1B Guy platform, and how I think, one of the reasons I've had the success I have is because of me bridging the gap between, the extreme left, the extreme right. Really, no one's safe here from the H1B Guy. And I don't want to find fault, but I want to change the system. And so, as I said, I've called you my good luck charm on my live streams. I think you originally found me through YouTube, I think is where you found me. So I'm going to let you tell me that story. But what was it that originally kind of attracted you to the H1B Guy platform? What is it that's kept you coming back?
Yeah, so as I told before, like I saw a lot of YouTube streams talking about immigration issues, and typically the visa bulletin updates or something like that. Well, I have a lot of those out there on YouTube. And then there are, like, talking about other immigrants issues such as DACA specifically, and helping other, like, asylum seekers and stuff like that. But as those topics have their, hold their own importance, but nobody was talking about H1B community specifically, which is here. And I don't want to debate, like, keep being here legally or illegally or whatever it is, but that particular community is here working on some jobs, and paying their taxes, and abiding by all the rules that the government of the United States and the Department of Labor or USCIS, they go through all of those scrutinies. They follow all the rules, but at the end of the day, they too have their own set of issues. Like, since I got a permanent job, I could think of, like, and my management is super supportive, and since I have, like, this assurance of staying here, I can at least buy a house, settle my life out here. There are a lot of H1B folks working, for endlessly, for without this whole guarantee of staying here, and they're paying taxes, and they're doing everything that they have to, but nobody
Hmm.
speaks about their journey, their sufferings, per se, their pain points.
Right.
And your channel did that, and that made a huge difference, and that matters to me a lot. Like, if and there was no platform to tell these
Hmm.
stories, and you came up with, I mean, the name itself you chose was the H1B guy, and I that was the reason enough for me to support your cause. And then when I started following, I believe you kept challenging yourself and kept improving the content, including the camera that you have. So
Thank you.
hats off to you. And it takes efforts. When I look back, so it's not just those 15 or 20 minutes or 30 minutes live streams making those videos. I mean, uh, I haven't been a content creator, but
Yeah.
I call myself a leecher, which, like, I use a lot of all these contents, like podcasts,
Yeah. Sure.
and then YouTube live streams, and I cannot thank you guys enough for making that content, such as you. And then there are, like, people like Scott Hanselman from Microsoft, which I follow,
Yeah.
like his podcast and stuff. So all these content creators, all of you are working hard to bring something
Hmm.
nice to us. So yeah, definitely. And when the content is related to me, my life, and whatever I go through, and my family has to go through, then yeah, definitely, I love that effort, and that's what
Well,
that's what brought me here.
that means so much, man, because I've told you, you've heard the story, and I hate to repeat it again here, but there may be someone who may be watching or listening for the first time, and I started all of this with a Chromebook and an iPhone 11, and you know slowly but surely started to grow my revenue streams, and my client base, and through that continue to help really refine the quality of the content here. But I think too, and this is just how YouTube works when you start a channel, unless you're a pro, is you start to kind of find your voice, and who you are is inside of you, but it takes time to come out. And I go back and look at some of that stuff that I did in July and August, and some of it's really good, some of it's really relevant, the quality is there, it just is. It needed some refining, like you said. I'm still learning every day. I learn something new every day, and it's interesting that you say creating relevant content that's relevant to you, and it goes back to I got asked a question on Twitter way back when in July, and what's the nexus between Ayla and Senator Durbin, and that answer is money. But that question on Twitter led me to have this, like, oh, I should do a video on that. And that video did really well. And it led to some other videos that were sort of crowdsourced and of course through the live streams and the Q&As. But the video I did on Monday, the Chats with Charlie, episode 1 breakdown, top 20 things I learned, that video has done really well this week. It doesn't have 1,000 views, but it has almost 700 right now. And that video is done well because what I did with that video is I watched it, I took notes, and I wrote down, kind of the 20 things that I learned from it, right? That I think are
Yeah.
relevant to you. And I did that in 10 minutes on my video. And I think that taking something that's an hour and condensing it to 10 minutes and giving you the things I learned from my perspective, my opinion, my point of view, there's a reason why that video is done so well. There's a reason why people are interested in the visa bulletins, because every month there's an anxiety over when's my date going to move forward, when's my date going to be current. And so, listen, I just want to thank you for your support. You don't miss live streams. When I reached out to you, you and I connected on Facebook and messaged around the holidays, and I knew you were really busy with end of the year stuff, and then when we finally got connected and had a chance to chat, I wanted you to come on the Stamp It Out series because you're a friend of the show, first and foremost. You're my friend, right? I've met you through YouTube and Facebook and Twitter, and we text frequently now. But the thing that I think is interesting here that you said is how do I continue to stay relevant? And so I've had a lot of people ask me about TikTok, and so I did my due diligence, and listen, I'm not a vlogger, I'm not a lifestyler, but I do have some influence, and I've realized that TikTok is where a lot of people are going for their content and for relevancy and for some cutting edge stuff. So I don't know exactly how I'm going to do that on TikTok. I'm going to try to figure it out. My Instagram has not been the greatest experience. I felt like my Instagram was a lot of prison photos, but there are people that message me and connect with me on Instagram. I want to do more there. But I've got to focus on what is my niche right now, right? Which is, the Twitter and LinkedIn and YouTube and the H1BGuy.com. But my TikTok is the H1B Guy. You can find me there. If you want to go ahead and follow that way, then when I put something out, you'll see it. Look for it. I don't know when, maybe April. I'll start it. I started it today. I'll probably put something out in April. But I wanted to ask you one last question, and then we've got a couple of questions in the chat. There's going to be some more that are coming, but I want to make sure that anyone who has a chance that has a question for myself or for Samir, please go ahead, throw that in the chat, or ask your question in the chat, and we'll bring it up. We only have a couple, Samir, but I'm not worried about that. This is more about you. I just wanted to make sure we had some time at the end. So you told me a story. Your company's an international company. If reform doesn't happen, you may have to consider an intercompany transfer internationally, but that's way ahead of the game here. I wanted to ask you this: what's next for Samir Kulkarni?
Yeah, so I love what I do right now, and next is to keep coding for a while, and then learn as much as I can out of new technologies in SAP space. Uh, grow myself as long as I can, and then help my wife grow in her career too, because she's the one who who looks after the whole family, and then helping my daughter achieve her goals in life,
Mhm.
enabling her with everything that I can, for her to become a good citizen and an amazing person that she is.
Yeah, I think when I don't know if you experienced this, but when I became a dad, I realized like there's just so much more um, that we have that we're responsible for than yourself, and it kind of changes who I became as a man when now I'm responsible for, a couple of people, right? And their being and their survival. And I know you've got just a great wife. I know how supportive she is of you. You've shared that with me, that you guys just have a great relationship. But listen, going through some of this anxiety of the H4 extensions and everything around that and the potential job loss, let's hope, in the next few months things start to clean themselves up. Let's hope. I think we're heading in the right direction. You and I were texting earlier, and I shared this with you, and you kind of shared with me, and that is, I got my first vaccine shot yesterday, get my next one in April. And I know you said you had gotten your second. We're feeling a little bit under the weather, but I think the vaccine, right, as we talked about on the H1B Guy Live back at the end in January, our vaccine card is going to be right there with our passport for our
Yes.
ability to travel, and how important that is. And it's crazy that people that have been some of the biggest advocates for a return to normalcy are also the same that are refusing, the vaccine. And listen, this isn't about me being on my vaccine high horse or anything like that. We're human beings. You have a choice. But, I just think to me, what are we going to do next? And that next is, for you, it's international travel. For me, it's really just peace of mind at the end of the day, right? That, listen, I will continue to be cautious and protect myself, but some peace of mind. Anything you wanted to add onto that?
No, definitely. Yeah, because I mean, I'm all for vaccines, be it flu vaccine or even this one, because and this one
Yep.
is more of an importance for us. Like, we lost a couple of family members during the
Yeah.
pandemic, especially my um, my spouse's father. He
Oh
passed
yeah.
away and due to the same reason.
Due
So all
due
the
to
more,
COVID. Yeah.
yes, yes,
Mm.
back in India, and all the more reason to get vaccinated and making sure that you. So it's not just about you, but I'm pretty sure there are people who love me enough not to lose me.
Right.
So
Well, and I
so
think, that the evolution of what the vaccine card is going to be, Samir, is I don't know how extreme it's going to go, but I think that, your inability to produce that you are is going to have some repercussions, I think, in
yes,
in
yes,
society in the future, whether that's employment based or not. I mean, I think that's how that relates to the channel and what we do here. But yeah, I
yeah.
mean,
I believe one critical aspect of it I can think of is a couple of my friends who traveled recently. They had to produce a certificate to the airline company, which was taken 72 hours
yeah,
within the flight
the
time. Yeah.
negative test. But think about, if you were to go to Hawaii, right, and what the negative test, or there's some of the 14-day quarantine stuff that's going on internationally, and again, the ability to produce it. But I just wanted to bring it up because you and I had texted about it earlier, and it's one of these things where we're starting to see the availability open up to more of the common healthy individuals that are residing here in the U.S. So anyway, I wanted to ask everyone again, just one more time. Go ahead, post those questions in the chat. If you haven't already, please like this video, as it helps promote the live stream to the YouTube algorithm. Subscribe to the H1B Guy channel here on YouTube. Click the bell for notifications so that you're notified anytime we go live, like we have here tonight. But I wanted to bring up the first question here, Samir. So this is from Guhan, and it says, "Does the dignity proposal take in account legal dreamers?" So I saw this. This is from the rep Salazar, I believe, the Republican representative from Florida. I'm not as versed on what what this means. I'm sorry. I'll have to read up on this. Samir, are you familiar with this? This would be a question for my guy Deep from Improve the Dream. He would know this.
Yeah, deep might know.
I
Yeah.
want to say it includes documented dreamers, but I could be wrong on that.
We could maybe
And
post the link to that group, Robert, so that these questions for Deep can be
yeah, so
he is very well versed
yep.
with all these topics.
Guhan, if you're not already, I'll go ahead to at Improve the Dream on Twitter, or Deep's at Aspiring Dreamer. So he definitely could ask that, and I can circle back to him on that. So sorry, I'm just not familiar. I know it's Rep Salazar, I believe it's a Republic. This is a Republican initiative for immigration that has come out of the House, but I don't know if that was included as part of the Dream and Promise Act. But I know, hey, Chetan, good to see you. You don't miss very many of these. Really appreciate your support as always. Dream and Promise Act includes GC for H4 and L1 dependent kids, but it excludes O1 dependents. Thanks to Advocacy by H1Bs, passing immigration piecewise will create contradictions like these. Yeah, I mean, O1 is that extraordinary ability. The most famous O1 that I would name is David Beckham. He came to the U.S. on an O1 when he came to play for the LA Galaxy. So think about that, right? Would be if they brought international soccer star brings a 17-year-old kid that comes here, plays here in the U.S. 4 years, kid turns 21 and would age out. But Chetan, I'm going to skip ahead here. So Chetan had said this was in reference to the dignity proposal. Chetan says he doesn't think that it includes the legal documented dreamers as part of it. So thank you, Chetan. I appreciate that. Chetan also says, hey, H1B Guy, it'd be great to have someone from the other side on the podcast for interviews to hear their side, maybe at Kumar exclusive. I'm not familiar with at Kumar exclusive. Is he an Indian more living in America that has a YouTube channel? I'll have to check him out. Samir, do you know?
No, not that I heard of.
I am connected with Parth Vijay Vergaya. He has 112, 115,000 subscribers on YouTube. I'd written an H1B article for his website gradical.com. And I haven't talked to him in a few months. I know he's been really busy, but he's someone. I don't know, Chetan, have you watched any of his stuff? And I'm connected to Yudi on LinkedIn, but I've never talked to him. But that may be a possibility. I could have somebody like that on. A couple of things that I have planned in advance that I'm working on is I'm going to have Dr. G on, and Dr. G is a mental health and wellness coach who has a podcast. She's going to be on in April. And I'm working on, I recently read Wretched Refuse. You see that over my right shoulder, maroon black binder right there. Wretched Refuse, that was written by Alex Narasta and Benjamin Powell, Alex Narasta of the Cato Institute. So I'm working on catching up with Alex, and I'm going to ask him to come on and do a book review, allow me to talk about the book with him. I don't know if he will. He's a pretty busy guy, director of Cato, but I'm going to ask. He can always say no, but maybe I can entice him to say yes with my positive review of Wretched Refuse. So those are a few things that I'm working on in terms of pro-immigration. I mean, I don't know Kumar exclusive, like I said, Chetan, but I could check out his channel and maybe connect with him on. Does he do Twitter or Instagram? I guess I can do my research. But I'm slowly growing my footprint, Samir. Right, and as you mentioned, Greg Siskin earlier in the stream, and to the COO Forum of Atlanta last Wednesday, I co-presented with Greg, and it created quite the stir on Twitter.
Yeah.
People, being very negative towards me associating with Greg. And I'll tell you, I said this earlier on my on the H1B Guy news for the week ending March 19th, 2021, that I was separately invited. It was the first time I personally interacted and met Greg. I get why a lot of you don't care for some of his points of view, but I found him to be extremely brilliant, and very knowledgeable, and also spoke of some things that honestly quite intrigued me. And so I'll just leave it at that. Again, I always say you've got to have a great immigration attorney, right, Samir? I
And I
mean,
second that opinion. I love his work. His platform too. He's quite thorough, and he comes out, and he although associated with ALA, so he's the person who made me believe that not all ALA lawyers are inclined towards one end of the spectrum. So
yep.
he's right there in the middle. Like he does support fairness for high skilled immigrants and stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that.
Yeah.
It's just that, like, these things are not in his hand to change, and he advocates what he can, and he helps on
Right.
his platform to people.
Right. Yeah, and again, I said, as I said, my initial impression of him was very positive. And quite honestly, I think he felt there was a mutual feeling there between he and I. He was very positive on my content and what I talked about, which, as I said earlier, was around the value of the H1B. It's never been higher in the history of the H1B visa. Right now, this moment, your H1B visa has never been more valuable. It just hasn't. And people that want to argue with me on that are going to get crushed. They just are. I will crush them with data-based facts. And that's it. So, Chetan had mentioned, hey, it'd be interesting to get someone from anti-immigration side on the podcast too, to hear the other side. So I have spoken with Virgil Birshwali. I don't know if you guys know Virgil. Virgil's a very anti H1B, really big on the job data statistics. He and I spoke. He called me out on his channel, and he and I spoke, and I had a great conversation with Virgil. Chetan, if he's somebody I can reach out to him if that would be something that would be interesting to you guys. I don't want to limit the content here. I don't know though. I mean, I will tell you, his message, and my message are the same, and that we promote American jobs, right? But I also, as I told him, that the job data that you're looking at isn't telling the whole story. And he and I talked about that a good bit. So Chet and I see you say yes to Virgil. I'll reach out to him again. I think he'd love to come on. I mean, I'll tell you, that guy's life has beat that guy up. It just has. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I think Virgil's a great guy. He's an American first guy. And he's got a good story to tell, and he's got a good story to tell on why he's so anti H1B, and it goes back to the fraud, right? And I think that talking about Kumar exclusive, he exposes H1B fraud and consulting fraud, and that's why you wanted to shy away from your current employer, Samir, right? Is the acronym name is RUN? That's consulting and middleman and the handlers and everything that goes into that. So Guhan asked, when will the Dream and Promise Act be voted on in the Senate? I haven't seen when that's supposed to hit the floor. I would imagine it'll be sometime in the next month or so. It has to work its way through committee. But Guhan, again, if this is something you're looking to keep up with and you haven't, if you have a documented dreamer, improvethedream.org/survey, complete the survey so that your documented dreamer can get involved in the Slack channel. But improvethedream.org has a lot of the latest updates and content, and they definitely know what's going on here. So Yeah, maybe invite immigration or CIS. I'm working on the like I said, Alex from Cato. I'd love to have him on. But you're talking about the Center for Immigration Studies. You know, the guys at Emmy Voice again. My contact for them is pretty distant. There's a couple of other groups that I'm a little bit more connected to that I could have on. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think
Yeah,
the
and
point is
probably,
that we want to tell all the sides, right, Samir? I mean,
yeah,
that's what Chetan is getting at here is that
most
um,
definitely. Yeah, that's like that's what I said. Like, what I see on social media is like the entire biases towards, like, one type of immigrants are bad, or another type of immigrants. No, it's like it's all like everybody is important in their own way, and they value in their own way. They matter. So
that's right.
yeah,
That's
another
right.
person I would like to have on this platform is like David Beer
Yeah.
from Cato Institute. He's really a good guy. Like,
Yeah,
he
he's done a lot in the last several months. If you look at everything he's put together and reform and law
yes,
proposals, and there's a lot of people that are big fans of his. He's been on a panel with my good friend Richard Ullman on the ILW streams that they've been doing, and you know he just comes across as very intelligent and listen, I mean, the guys at Cato are libertarian, right? They're very,
yeah,
they're small government, personal rights types, very pro free immigration, right? Their whole thing is to dispel the new economic case for immigration restrictions through wretched refuse. And so yeah, I mean, you nailed it, right? Have somebody from like Cato on, and I'm connected with Alex, and I hope he'll accept my invite. I think he will. But again, he's a busy guy, and it may be a couple of months from now before that happens. But yeah, I'm definitely working on it, and again, this goes back to Samir or Chetan. If you guys have ideas for content, I mean, I know Samir, you and I have talked about, hey, Rob, why don't you cover this? I'm open to it. There is a lot of work you alluded to earlier that goes into it. So as much advance notice as you can give me to give me some time to create it and really get my ideas around it and think around it. I'd love to. And Samir, I just wanted to say thank you to you, man. Your friendship, first and foremost, is extremely valuable to me personally. Your support of this channel is, I'm just forever grateful for that. As I said, and I will continue to say, you are my good luck charm. When you showed up, the channel really started to grow. It's allowed me to cross over, the 1,000 subscriber mark, well past 1,200 now and growing. And listen, I'm not going to look back. I know that there are bigger and badder channels out there, but I'm going to just continue to be me. I'm going to grow organically. I'm going to put out good quality content. But I am so glad to kick off the Stamp It Out Q&A series, episode 8, first one of 2021 with you. I can't think of anybody better to have on, and I just wanted to thank you for sharing your story tonight.
no, most definitely. Thanks for having me, and I'd like to take this opportunity to tell all the folks who are like listening and watching this, do support the channel in all the way possible. Like, even the monetary, because it's important for content creators to arrange for stuff, study a lot of things, and then when he points out those 20 points out of that Charlie summary, it's a time that he is giving out of his family time, his professional time, and that should be valued for. And that's what I support all the time. So there are super chats, there are other ways to support Robert, and definitely I love to do that, and I would encourage everyone watching this
Well,
to do that.
thank you so much. You're right. I mean, I think at the end of the day, the biggest ways that you can support me are subscribing to this channel and liking my videos. You don't have to send me a dime to do that. Okay. The other ways are reading the content on the website, which a lot of it is the videos. It just is. But I know some people prefer to read versus watch. And then there's some people who only want to watch and listen and not read. So checking out the website, liking and subscribing on YouTube, and just watching my content, that is the number one way that you can support me. If you have a friend that has an issue and the attorney's telling them one thing, their employer's telling them another, and they need someone to help them figure it out, I can help give them non-legal advice based on my opinion and my 16 years of experience and dealing with high-skilled immigrants and very unique, complex work authorization issues. That's another way you can help me. But as Samir said, and when I do live streams, the super chats are on, right? So super chat stickers, super chat comments. I don't. This has been one of those things, Samir, that I've been torn with promoting, right? Because at the end of the day, I need people to help me. And well, hey, look at that, Samir. Hey, you promote it and Chetan comes through. Thank you so much, my friend.
Thanks for having.
I'm forever grateful for your support. You don't miss these streams, but the fact that you're willing to drop me a pear sticker, thank you so much. I'm very grateful for that. I did create a buy me a coffee, which you can go in. It's buymeacoffee.com/the H1B guy. And all of the descriptions of my videos, I have my Venmo, my PayPal, my Cash App. I am a content creator. I am a work authorization expert and consultant in building out global delivery strategies for obtaining high-skilled immigrants. But I wanted to make sure when I did this that we did it right, and that is to be a voice for those that don't have one. I mean, you've seen a lot of the anti-Asian hate going on here in Atlanta. We had those shootings last week that's created this awareness in the Asian community. And Indians are South Asians, right? At the end of the day,
Yeah,
you
that
are
just
that
saddens.
demographic,
Yeah, that just saddens my heart. It's been very unfortunate of late, whatever happened.
It is.
It's
And
something heartbreaking.
life is too short. And I've got some really big things that I'm really excited to bring. I'm working on something really big that you're going to see the beginning of April, that I just can't be more excited about. I've got some things that, as I've alluded to, I'm working on that are going to be towards the summer that they're going to launch. But Samir, it's guys and girls like you that have allowed me to make a career of this now. Some little crazy dream that started from, hey, go ask Robert. He's the H1B guy. He can answer that question. To now, right now, this minute, again, over 2,000 followers on Twitter, over 1,200 subscribers here on YouTube, and growing every day. My website for the month of February, as I said, did 3,000 views. I'm hoping March is going to be above that. And we're trending in that way. And so, Samir, that tells me that people like you are interested in what I have to say, right?
Most
And
definitely.
so I just want to say thank you again. Thank you to your family for allowing you to take, this hour plus to sit back and chat it up with me. I got one last comment I wanted to show. So the legal limiter says, hey, Chet, and I've tried to have dialogue with the likes of Virgil and U.S. tech workers, but it is futile. They come with cynicism and hatred and not open for discussion. As I said earlier, my conversation with Virgil was not that. There was definitely a guard to him, but I think when he realized, honestly, that I support American workers first, but ultimately what I support is high-skilled legal immigration that solves staff augmentation issues in large enterprises, because we don't have the talent pool. That the U.S. will lose the human capital war if we restrict high-skilled legal immigration. Then he honestly, from that conversation, it was different. But what you've got to understand is that there are hundreds and thousands of guys like him and girls like him that that lost their jobs and blame high skilled immigrants for that. And there's nothing that we can do to change that opinion. And ultimately, listen, I'll work on this. If you guys think it'll be of interest, what I don't want it to be is a train wreck and a hate fest. And so, Samir, I think that's one of the things that that I wanted to make sure that we don't do, right?
Yeah.
That this channel is about telling your story. The Stamp It Out Q&A series is about telling personal immigrant stories that are documented, and so we've done that here for you tonight. And I'm going to go ahead and remind everyone that tonight's live stream was brought to you by RecruiterNetworks.com, the smart solution for digital perm ads since 2001. This national job board network provides recruitment websites in 1,024 major U.S. metro areas. Each local job board is its own portal and is a low-cost resource for immigration recruitment ads for all industries and professions with a flat price of $225 per ad, regardless of which city you choose. RecruiterNetworks.com has been the #1 place for immigration attorneys, immigration ad agencies, and employers to meet the DOL requirements for the digital portion of the perm advertisement rules. RecruiterNetworks.com. Tell them the H1B guy sent you. Well, Samir, I want to give you one last chance. Your Twitter handle is at
SAMIR31.
So at ESAMIR31 on Twitter. And then on LinkedIn, Samir Kulkarni. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. And so you can connect with him on either one of those, professionally on LinkedIn or follow his musings on Twitter. Samir, as I've told you, gonna have you back on, potentially the H1B Guy and Friends Live at some point in the very near future. But thank you again so much.
Thanks. Couldn't be happier. Thank you.
Well, just wanted to ask everyone one last time, make sure we like this video, subscribe to the H1B Guy channel here on YouTube, and click the bell for notifications so that you're notified anytime we go live like we did here tonight for the Stamp It Out Q&A Series 8. Samir, I'll get this audio at some point on the H1B Guy podcast, probably be a few months before I do that. But again, thank you to everyone who joined us here tonight. Legal Immigrant, Chetan, Guhan. I know we had a bunch of others that didn't jump in the chat that did decide to join us. But I'm Robert. I'm the H1B Guy, your global source for all things H1B.